And hello, Kim. I'm very
Hello.
happy to have you here in the Flow of
Thank you.
Life podcast. We're going to have in this podcast, we have conversations about our being side, how we can grow and evolve together. And I'm very happy to have Kim Searle here with us, and we're going to talk today about emotions, as is Kim's speciality. I met Kim a while ago, and we had an amazing conversation. And we spoke about emotions and a lot of other things. But since then, I really, really wanted to have another chat with you. So welcome, Kim. Thank you for being
Oh,
here.
thank you so much, Elena. Yeah, because last time we spoke, we just spoke and we spoke and we spoke. There's just so much to cover, wasn't there? It was fabulous. So I really appreciate you having me back on today. Thank you.
No, of course, I'm glad it happened and we made it happen. So I wanted to first invite you to introduce yourself for everyone to know you. What do you do? And yeah, please go ahead.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been a long journey to now. So I think my background has been many and varied, but it's been following two paths in parallel since probably my early 30s. I had worked in banking and building societies, and I knew that was not really me. So I started doing learning and started off doing the small stuff. So a 6-week reflexology course, a back and hand massage course, a back in the day typewriting course. I did all sorts of things. And it was only after a marriage breakup that I started to realize that I needed to work on me. So I did training. So not only was I getting the work done, but I was learning at the same time. And of course, that was one arm that was going whilst I carried on working eventually in the telecoms industry, primarily as a project manager. And I carried on like that until 2018 when I was ill. I had glandular fever and it completely wiped me out. I was in bedbound on and off for about 6 months. Whilst I wasn't bedbound after that, I did find that I needed to go to bed for a couple of days at a time at regular intervals, so I couldn't work properly. But what it did do was allow me to follow the path that I've been following along the side of the day job. So I had trained as a hypnotherapist back in 2010, thereabouts. So I'd been doing it part-time, but now was the time to do it full-time. And actually, in the last few months, last few years, I have moved slowly from just therapeutic work to the coaching work, and latterly the emotional content, because I suddenly realized after writing a book in 2018, oh my word, it all comes from those early learnings. I know for a lot of people, they're like, oh, I don't want to go in the past, want to move forward. But it's like trying to build a new house on rocky foundations that haven't been sorted out. Unless you clear the path and sort it all out and lay better foundations, you're just on a hiding to nothing otherwise. So emotions have been there all the way through from when I first started training, because I was, going through the divorce. It was very emotional. Right to the present day when I am more aware when I'm talking to people of what's going on for them.
That's absolutely amazing. Well, what a journey, Kim. I didn't know all the details, and that's incredible. Yeah, you've done a lot of amazing things.
Thank you.
And I can imagine the process for you, again, dealing with the divorce and dealing then with the disease that you mentioned, the roller coaster of emotions that you've had to go through. And so that's why I wanted to ask you if that journey was kind of what inspired you to focus really on emotions out of everything, because you've learned therapy, you did therapy and a lot of things, but
Yeah.
what really made it be emotions for you?
Well, when I was going through the divorce in my mid-30s, I was devastated. But I have to hold my hands up as the one that left, but only because I'd got so low, I couldn't cope, and I didn't understand why it was hitting me so hard. And I realized through the process I wasn't grieving, well, not at that point, I wasn't grieving for the marriage, I was grieving for my mum, who I lost when I was 8. So,
Oh, interesting.
you know, that outpouring of I'm isolated, I'm alone, I've got these 2 children, I'm now on my own, there's no one there for me, la la la. And of course, as I've gone through all the training courses, what they've taught me is to understand that I was never really alone. So for the religious people who are watching this, God or Jesus or Muhammad or whoever it is that you believe in most is always there. And actually, there were people around me. I just needed to ask and speak up. So why was that not happening? And of course, that emotional content was just outpouring everywhere. I'd lose my temper, I'd be irritable and just wanting to sleep. So I would Tony Robbins puts it as the crazy 8. So I would be on one side really angry and rah, 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 and then something would happen and then I whiz over to really low, not depressed, but the idea of just not being in a good place. And then I'd be there for a little while and then I'd whiz over and be really angry. And there was no real happy medium, even though I was trying my best to be that. And I think over the course of the last 25 odd years, maybe a bit longer, I've learned how powerful those emotions are to hijack you. And I've been clearing ever since all the stuff that's gone on. It doesn't have to be like that for everyone, but I've had to learn the hard way how to clear them. And of course, when I was going through it, I couldn't find anything because there was no interweb back then. Oh, hello.
Yeah.
And there was very few books on it. I'm sure they were there, but they weren't in Waterstones or any of our current bookshops. So yeah. So emotions, it was very clearly I was quite emotional and didn't realize it.
Okay, no, that's amazing. And I imagine through that journey, when do you also kind of made a connection also when emotions and the body, right? When you mentioned as well later on kind of developing that disease, and what has been your research there and your investigation there as well, kind of in emotions, how connecting with the body, and how when we ignore them and we are in that 8 that you were talking about, that was fascinating, that 8 that we fall sometimes into that. But
Yeah.
then where is the body? Is the body in between, kind of getting the punches, it's kind of, I was having the image of the body kind of being in between of that 8 and kind of getting the bouncing back and movement. So yeah, what's
So
been your
it's a very good question. So I'm going to start, if I may, with the brain. A lot of people are really familiar with the idea of the thinking mind and our mental health, blah, blah, blah. That's here. And that's right, because it's at the front. And now there is also, the whole understanding of what the brain is and where the unconscious mind is. And it's only recently, so I'm always on a learning journey. But what happens is the brain is connected to the body, and this is the important bit, via a network of nerves and the nervous system via the vagus nerve. Now, this is really important. And I've known about the vagus nerve for a little while, but it connects the brain through the heart to the gut. And what happens is it sends out all the nerves and everything. So I think when we're talking emotions, that nervous system is the one that communicates back to the brain and says, this is the way to think and act. So our emotions are stored wherever our emotions are stored. And I believe it's everywhere in all our cells. And we store them there as a memory because our cells are really good at memories. And just very quickly there, if I may, if you think about a cell knows what to do, that's what I'm talking about. It's got a memory, so it does. So I think the emotions are stored everywhere, but generally they're stored in pockets somewhere. So if you love someone, it tends to come from the heart, doesn't it?
Yes.
If you really hate them, it can come from the heart or the head, the gut, depending on where you are. So I think they're everywhere, and the connection is through that whole nervous system to the brain, and the brain is actually just a puppet. Bless it.
Yeah. Exactly. which is good news because we tend to give so much power to the brain, but it's like, but
Yes,
it's kind of the other way around. And I
I
also
believe so.
yeah, I also learned not long ago about the Vegas system,
Mm.
and it's fascinating. And it's fascinating how it connects everything, and then we can understand more things. So, Kim, what would you say is kind of then the purpose of emotions?
To keep us safe, primarily in our first 7 years, the primary purpose of those emotions is to keep us safe. What happens is that deeper mind, the reptilian mind or whatever,
Mm.
wants to make us live. So it's taking information in through our five senses, passing that data back through the brain and down through the nervous system, and the body is learning, is that good or not good? And regardless of what the answer is, it applies the appropriate biochemical marker, the emotion.
Mhm.
And when something happens, if it's good, it will fire the biochemical marker of happiness, love, fun, whatever it might be on the positive side, floods through our system, through the nervous system. Or it's a holy crap, let's get out of here. This is scary. Let's not do this, or freeze, whatever it is. It's exactly the same mechanism. It fires off the biochemical, the emotion marker through the system, which tells the body what to do. They are there to keep us safe. By the time we get to about 8 or 9, it's then about fitting in. So
Ah,
we're keeping safe. That's all there in the reptilian brain. Now it's about fitting in. And this is where I have found, I mean, there's a lot of stuff can be found in that first 7 years, but between the ages of 8 and 24, we want to fit in. We need our tribe. We need our group.
yes.
And often joke about the whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll of the old teenagers. I don't think they'll do that since Brexit, but there was very much
Yes,
that
yes.
idea of identity. And of
Mm,
course, it's no wonder teenagers are lost, because their identity, where do they get it from?
yeah.
So I think the emotions are there. They are a sat nav for us. Are we in good space?
Mm.
They can also be a bit of they can be a bit sort of mismix messaging, because you can get too comfortable with where you are. So
Mm.
that's when you really need your brain. But
What do you
primarily,
mean when you get too comfortable where you are? What do you mean
so
by that?
so if you think about, I'm going to use a job as an example, because I've been guilty of this. You get into a job, it's really scary, but you learn it. And I always say it takes 6 months to get your feet under the table,
Mm.
4 months to really feel like you belong. Oh, hello, same thing there. And then before you know it, you've got into your rhythm and you understand what you're doing. It's comfortable. And then, for whatever reason, you may get a redundancy notice, or you've got a manager that's not who you want to be, or
Yeah.
you've got ambition.
Mm.
Suddenly, you've got to think about moving on. And actually, it's easier to stay where you are. And
Mm.
your emotions are like, oh, stay there. But actually, if you dig deeper, what is that about? The comfort is actually a form of fear, because to step out of your comfort zone means change. So you just need to be mindful of them, that they are working for you, but they are just communication. That's all. They're just a feedback system to say how you're doing.
Right. No, that's amazing. And I want to talk a bit more about fear, because it's the big one that I also love to talk about, because it's really at the
Yes.
root of so many things. Uh,
Yes.
Freaky fear. But when you were talking about, I was very interesting at kind of in all the emotions that you were talking about, and coming back to the 8 and what you were saying, that they are information.
Mm.
how how in practical ways kind of do you suggest we use that, we get that information, how, because you explained the whole scientific side, and that was super cool, that was super
Thank you.
amazing. And so for people, like, how in practicalities, how can they get the information, because emotions are energy, right? They're energy, emotions
They
are
are.
energy, and energy carries information, right? So
Yeah.
how can they get these informations? Obviously, whether there is something, there's a threat, but nowadays we don't have many threats. They're all psychological threats.
Mm.
but how can they access kind of what information they're trying to tell? Sometimes people will feel things like you were describing in the example of the work or everything, but how can they get what's going on? How can they access that information? I don't know if you
Yeah,
any ideas on that.
great question, Helena. And I know that you'll know this, but this is where we got to learn who we are.
Mm.
Who are we really?
Mm.
Not who we've learnt to be.
Big difference.
That is a big difference, isn't it? Because,
Yeah.
you know, people, I mean, I remember this only too well. I identified as a single mother. I've said here I was a single mother and I was working. So I had a job. So I was project manager, blah, 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 blah. No, that's not who I was. Who am I at a deeper level? And
Mm.
I think, you know, it's a journey that people tend to start, you know, at some point round about the 30s or 40s, because they've been living this standard life and they're beginning to question something about them. And it could be that they've been through a bereavement or redundancy, something big has happened, and they start to question, who am I? Where am I going? How have I got here? It's
Mm.
those questions that will help. It's about tuning in, you know, when something happens. What is going on for me? What is that about?
Mm.
What do I need? I very often talk to people who are struggling and they say, what is it you need? Because we don't think about us. We are thinking about, you know, the family, our partners, our, you know, our work colleagues, our boss, our clients, our neighbors, everybody else. And we don't necessarily think about ourselves. And I
Mm.
think that's where I was when the whole marriage fell apart, because I was thinking, I can't do it because of the children. I can't do it because it is mum and dad. I can't do it because of our friends. I can't do it because we can't afford it. You know, there's the dog to think of. It was just crazy. Where was I? Well, I think I was lower than 6, so there must have been a couple of others in there. I was not there. And
Mm.
that's really a good sign. So I think the first thing is, where are you on your list? And I'm not talking selfish here. I mean, you know, when you're
Yeah, no,
talking to people,
absolutely.
it's
So
not
important.
about being selfish, is it?
Yeah, yes, yes.
It's about self-discovery. It's about understanding yourself and understanding how you react in certain situations. The things that trigger you. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've got some great triggers. Just don't get me on those topics. Back in the day, I used to have
Triggers are
soapboxes.
amazing. Yeah,
We used to
they're
talk
not
about
easy.
soapboxes.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
exactly. Oh God, don't get me
They're not
started.
easy, but they're so necessary, especially when you were mentioning it. Well, before you said something about emotions help us grow and evolve. Uh,
Mm.
kind of those triggers, and what's your connection there with growing and evolving and the triggers that you're talking about? So yeah,
And we
it's
just got to notice it. We just got to become self-aware. In a
yes,
nutshell, self-aware. And that's where people like yourself, Helena, can really make a difference. Can't you? You can help people become more self-aware just by conversations. You know, it doesn't have to be intense. You know, you haven't got to dig into your deep past. You can just have a conversation, and that can be enough to just shift you
yeah,
around.
yes. Just acknowledge what is going on.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
talking. Yeah, 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 with the present. So that's really good. So, and how on that on this topic, I was also kind of thinking like how then it's the idea to regulate emotions, because I think that's the perhaps the hardest part sometimes, because it's easy to get overwhelmed by emotions. It's
Oh,
easy to get overwhelmed at work, even at work, personal life, everything. Sometimes we get overwhelmed by emotions. So what's the best ways that you have practiced, that you have discovered that we can regulate, that people can regulate their emotions?
yes. What a great question there as well. You're coming up with some really good ones here. I think it depends on the individual, because we're all unique. So there will be certain things that people will naturally go to.
Mm.
But if you're anything like me, because I'm a bit sort of a bit flighty like this, I get bored with that. Oh, I'll do this one. So there are a number of different techniques. So it depends. So if I may, I'll just mention a few.
Yes.
If you're very much in your head,
Mm.
um, talking it through with somebody can be very helpful. So it could be a friend or a coach like yourself, where they can come and talk through what's going on. and understand what that feeling's doing for them. And again, you know, the one question there, what do you need? Because what you're talking to is that early learning self, that inner child, if you like, that didn't have the capacity to process whatever was going on. Because this is the key here with emotions. We haven't been able to process what went on. And we've just held it, it's got stuck. Bit
Yeah.
like a photo, if you like, a little picture inside an image, and the body's holding on to it. So just by talking about it, airing it, why does that work? Because you may recall, I talked about the five senses, and that's how our body learns. So in order to unlearn something, we have to tap into as many of those senses as possible.
Interesting.
When you're talking, you're engaging your brain because you know what you need to say, which engages your sense of hearing, your feeling, whatever you're talking about. So if it's emotional, start together. Or if it's sad, oh God, it was really awful. You know, and I'm being a bit drama-y there, but you know, it depending on the emotion, you can express it. And the moment you express it, it's the kinesthetic sense of feeling, and you can see what's going on. You're engaging the three senses.
So kind of
I
bringing
often,
from the mind to bringing people from the mind to what it's feeling. I fall for that one a lot. Like I can be very rational as well. I can be emotional, but I can be very rational as well. And sometimes they have to tell me like, hey, you're in your mind. What are you feeling? Like, oh yeah, true.
That's right. But they may not, because one of the things for me was I spent a lifetime I did emotion, but I didn't recognize it. Sort of from here down, no, I don't know idea what you're talking about. So I almost have to do a translation. So this talking can be very powerful. The other thing that you can do, and I love this as a cerebral type, is to write.
Yes.
Just journal. And you'll hear people talking journaling, they won't have a clue why that works. Exactly the same thing. You're tapping into three senses. You're tapping into your auditory side because you're thinking and writing is kinesthetic, and you're seeing what you're writing on the page. How
Yes.
amazing is that? So I think journaling is a really powerful way to regulate your emotions, because you can write things down, and oh boy, can that be very therapeutic just on your own.
Absolutely. Just I feel that sometimes the word journaling has such a bad connotation, because I remember when I started coaching, they were talking about journaling. I was like, no, I don't journal, because I imagine the typical, hi journal. How am I today? How are you today? You know, the kind of teenager
Yes.
thing, like that the journal for me had attached to that idea. So then as soon as I started realizing that just writing down, and sometimes I just write down with verb by hand as well. And it completely shifted my idea from this journaling that looked very kind of teenager kind of thing than to just writing. So
Very formal as well, it sounds, doesn't it, when you're journaling?
I don't know. It for me it has very different kind of, everybody has a different version of it. But as soon as we changed the word, then immediately I felt more invited to do it, and I see the power that it has that you mentioned. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And for creative types, they could draw. How many artists have done some really crazy stuff that, you know, has vented for them? I mean, there's art therapy, you know, drawing can be or even exercise can be a really kinesthetic way of expressing those emotions. And the more you can express them, so acknowledge them and express them, the more you're beginning to regulate. I think if you keep feeling the same emotion over the same thing, there's something deeper. But for, you know, your everyday thing, perfect. My sister cleans. I wouldn't mind her living a bit closer, quite frankly,
Oh my
because when
God,
she gets angry, she, oh, yeah, all right, okay, come on over.
Lauren, come in.
Exactly. So from the
Yeah.
kinesthetic, the touchy-feely type of person, that's it. And there is one that sort of, for me, encapsulates all of it. I'm not a qualified anybody in it, but it's really easy and you don't need to be. And that's EFT. I think we talked about this, didn't we? Did we not? Can't remember. Emotional freedom technique, also known as tapping.
Yes. Yes.
What I love about this is you can clear stuff, but you
Mm.
can also start to reprogram the body
Mm.
into the positive, better things that you want, which is great, isn't it? And it's about tapping certain points. So this is just one version. There'll be others out there. If you top the tap of your head, tap the top of your
Yeah, yeah, you did it. Yeah.
even that's just changed the whole thinking. So you tap at the top of your head, and then you work round a set of points so that the sort of like the third eye, for those that you know that, but if not, the middle of your forehead, just above your eye, on
Mm.
the side of your eye, just under your eye, under the nose, the chin, and just where your collarbone is, you tap there. You can do 1, 2. It doesn't matter whether it's left or right. There is no doing this wrong, which is what I love. And then you work through your fingers. I think there's one finger that doesn't work, but just do it anyway. Let's keep it
Yeah,
simple.
that's
And then
important.
the back of the hand, and then the top of the hand. As you're doing that, particularly if you're angry or sad, you can then talk to yourself. Just talk to yourself. They
Oh,
talk about
do that.
setup statements. Yeah, that was really bad. I'm really angry over that. What were they thinking? Oh gosh, this is the impact on me. What am I going to do? And you might
And
work
what
your
do you
way through
feel when you
the.
do that? Like, do you feel the body really relaxes? You feel distracted? What is the effects on you? On yeah, personally. Yeah.
So exactly, what you're doing is that you're expressing the emotions, and you work around it usually 3 times, and you should start to see it come down. So they very often say is to put a number to it, 0 to 10, 10 being the worst it's going to be, and then see what 3 rounds does. Does that bring you down? I always believe if you can get below 3, you're laughing. But even 5's good. That sounds like there's been some movement. And then what you can do is go around and say, this is what I want. I want to feel calmer. I want to feel more in control. I can manage my emotions much better. I'm finding that actually the more I release, the better I can feel. And now I want to feel more happy. I want to feel more
Nice.
something else, whatever. And what you're doing is you're not just regulating, you're clearing.
Mm.
Brilliant. I love that.
I love that. Absolutely love that. Yes, thank you for bringing that. Absolutely. Those three
Mm,
systems to regulate, they were really,
yes.
really nice. And the last one is absolutely amazing. And I'll definitely try it next time. I
Yes.
do it a little bit in sometimes when I put my cream on, but I've never done it to regulate my emotions. So I'll definitely try that. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Love that.
No, my pleasure. I wish it was mine, but it's not. It's an amazing technique. And for those of you who are
Yes.
interested, it's actually tapping into the energy meridians of the body. So what you're doing is you're helping the energy move around. And I talked process earlier. The emotions need to be processed, moved, because that's what energy does. It flows, and you're just clearing it. So
Amazing. Amazing. I love it.
love it, love it, love it.
Oh my God, Kim, I have so many questions to ask you. I hope we're going to have enough time, but I did wanted to mention,
Mm,
to talk a little bit about fear, because I think it's such a big emotion. And I
yeah.
and I don't know if that's the one that you feel you have to work more with your clients, or if there is another one, please do share. And I wanted to also, if you can tie that up also with emotions at work, because we think that we don't bring emotions at work, but we do. And I've
Oh,
realized that we definitely bring fear to work as well. I've been realizing through
mm,
my own work, and that's something that I also do when I work with companies. So yeah, I just wanted to know your insights on that.
oh, where to start? I'm going to start with a story, I think. Years ago, I was working in what is now Orange Business Services. I don't know what job I was doing. I think it was probably between jobs, but just keeping busy. And to this day, I don't know what it was about. But one of the guys, he was my manager, and we got on really, really well. But something happened, and we started arguing, which is not good, is it? At the best of times.
It
And
happens.
he was getting really angry with me,
Mm.
but had the audacity to call me emotional. Now, I only wish I'd been on the ball then, because being angry and shouting at me is highly emotional, but he, for some reason, it didn't compute with him, because he was telling me I was being emotional. And it was really interesting. And then I say anger, although we want to talk about fear, because anger is the surface emotion. If people are angry, what they're really doing is defending themselves because they're fearful. Oh, hello.
Yeah, like boom.
When you realize that and they're getting angry with you, it's not you, it's something for them, and they're protecting something for themselves. They're fearful that they're going to lose something or whatever. So it's a really powerful emotion. And the thing is, it doesn't always turn up as fear. So already you can see it can turn up as anger.
Mm.
But what if fear could turn up as perfectionism, procrastination, imposter syndrome, or I'm just trying to think some other, lack of motivation? What if fear could turn up as, avoidance techniques? There are just so many ways fear manifests itself in our world, but we will not recognize it as fear. So, it's there as an undercurrent. And when I did neurolinguistic programming, the one that I trained with, I don't know, they're all the same model. Anger's the top one, which covers sadness, so depression can be in there. But fear underpins that. And then under that is guilt, and then jealousy. Now, guilt's a waste of time. Anybody who does guilt, it's a whole nother topic. You really need to stop it, because the only reason you're doing that is because somewhere you've learned something at a fear level, and your bottom one is guilt. So fear is the biggest emotion because it's all about keeping us in survival. So, but it can show up in so many different ways. So many different ways.
Yes.
And I've just named some of them, but I'm sure if I sat down, I could come up with a whole load more.
Yes. No, and you definitely have mentioned the same ones. I mean, I procrastinate. I mean, it does. Guilty. Yeah, and I've had moments as well of lack of motivation, and I realized that it was not lack of motivation, but it was fear. So no, you mentioned quite important ones but it's just so fascinating how fear is such a big emotion that drives it. Of course, because it comes from our survival need.
Yeah.
But I love that you brought it even deeper with the emotions of guilt, and perhaps, I don't know if shame as well will be one of those ones, because guilt and shame are quite strong. We feel them quite strongly.
We do.
But yeah, no, incredible. So I wanted to ask you, so what is something that you have learned about emotions that perhaps not everybody knows? I don't know if perhaps you already mentioned it, but I don't know, one of
What
those.
else might there be that I can tell you about emotion? What a big question. I'm going to just start talking, and I'm sure something will come from that. Oh, yes, here we go. They're contagious.
Fascinating.
So I'm going to go back to COVID. Now, I was probably way too blasé about the whole situation. And my family and some of my friends were really scared about it all, really scared about it. But what people don't realize is that nervous system, the unconscious mind, is constantly checking where we are 24/7. It never turns off. And what it's doing is checking you're safe. And of course, to do that, it's got to take the information from your surroundings. But what it also does, it's probably just excuse me.
Yeah, sure.
Had something just drop out my ear. Can you still hear me all right?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So what people don't realize is that we are connecting with people. So even though we're on a virtual something here, we are connected, in many different layers. And for those who are into chakras, definitely at a chakra level, up and above.
Yes.
Sometimes not always all the way through. So we are connected to others. And that is another way that our body will check we are safe.
Mm.
And it will check in with people. So if they're feeling in a good mood, you're in a good mood. You go home at night and your partner's in a good frame of mind and you've had a crap day, you'll find your energy's lifted in some way. I don't say you'll suddenly become to their level, but you'll feel in a very short space of time lifted. And if you come home and they're just in a foul mood,
Mm.
avoid them. You've tapped into them on a different level, their energy field and your energy field. And that is feeding back through the nervous system into our emotions. And they're contagious. And I genuinely believe, and this may be a bit controversial, is that we took on a fear factor 10 times more than we needed to because everybody globally was worried about what was going on. And I'm not going to deny the death rates. I'm not denying it was real. Absolutely. What I am saying is the fear factor was magnified at least 10 times, if not more, for everybody because we were tuning into everybody. And the unconscious mind doesn't know what's real and what's not. It just knows if they're worried, maybe I've got something to be worried about. Elevate it, DEFCON 2 or something, and then just continuing raise it. And I talk about a super conscious highway, not all the time, but a super conscious highway.
Tell us more.
Yeah, which is the energy field that is around us. Now, for those of you who are not into that idea, in quantum mechanics or quantum physics, oh no, one of those quantum sciences, they are proving that a proton in one place can influence at exactly the same time a proton in another. I mean, that's what the whole Hadron Collider is all
The
about.
entanglement, yeah, the law of entanglement.
That's it. Yes, exactly that.
We are
So
entitled, all of us, everything, the
exactly.
way. And I'm so glad that you brought that up on how emotions are contagious. And I love how you say it. They're contagious. It is so powerful to acknowledge it and to know that. But then how do we do, Kim? Because obviously we need, and some people are going perhaps going to be aware, empaths. They're going to be
Yes,
feeling everything around them,
everything.
right?
Mm,
So then what will be the best way then to acknowledge it? It connects again to knowing ourselves, to knowing our state of being. If we know our state of being, a state of mind, we know this is
mm.
my emotion, and we know that my partner is in that emotion, so we can feel it, but we don't absorb it. I don't know. So what have you discovered on that we can do, people can do?
I think you've described that really well, if I'm honest. It's all back to self-awareness. There's somebody called Byron Katie who talks about the 4 questions. Now I can't remember them, but what they're saying there is that we need to just check, is this mine?
Hmm.
Is this my emotion? And the more that you become self-aware, the more you can tune in, you'll get the answer, yes or no. And I think trust it. Trust the answer that you get. It will be off sometimes, it will be wrong sometimes, but it will be right more often than it's wrong. And before you know it, you'll be able to tell the difference. But if it's not yours, you've just got to, okay, I no longer need to do that. And then, tap your way through, if you like. Whatever works for you to get rid of that emotion, go running and just say, it's not mine. When I come back, it's clear. So I think that's an important point. Is this mine or not? And if it's yours, then that's the whole what do I need type thing, which part of me is struggling. So yeah, I think you've nailed it on the head beautifully there. Well done.
And but you said something interesting. Sometimes when the emotion is ours, I mean, yes, we feel the other people. Sometimes it's that self-knowledge help us to also say, okay, I'm feeling this emotion. I'm gonna be careful not to project it on the other person. Sorry, project it on the other person. So again, we come back to that self-awareness and getting to know our emotions so we
Mm.
don't project it on others. I think it's with your example, it was good to think about that as well.
That is harder though, isn't it? Not to infect other people with your crap.
It's really hard because we can try consciously, but then it comes to what you shared about we are all connected anyway. So
Yeah,
we are sharing it. People are getting it because we are sentient beings. We absorb this information. It's in the quantum field. So
it is.
the energy. So yeah, it's a tricky one. So
Do
it,
you know, it was just going through my head as you said that, we owe it not just to ourselves, and we definitely owe it to ourselves, because stagnant energy can result in illness.
yes,
It's obviously not scientific, as in NHS type scientific, but there are scientists out there who are proving this can be a real problem.
yes,
So,
yes.
you know, we owe it to ourselves, but do we not owe it to our families as well? I like to think that the work that I've done on myself over the years um, has helped my daughters, and hopefully influenced my grandchildren
Mm,
in new ways of being, because they're seeing how much I've evolved from when they were children. Because I was, yeah, as I've already said, I was angry, and goodness knows what, I wasn't a very pretty picture. But I do still do anger. It doesn't mean say you'll never do emotions again if you clear something. You're just clearing a memory. You're just clearing a memory and the emotion attached with it. It's not to say you'll never be angry, but I'm much less likely to get angry than I ever used to.
mm,
So I think we sort of owe it,
mm,
not just to us, but to those around us. And what if, here's a thought, we could do that and influence our circle so that their energy rises, and then in their own little way, they may not have you doing the work, but they will influence their circle, and it just ripples out, and we could make massive changes in this world as a result, I think.
absolutely.
And it's going to take a generation or two, but it will happen.
But we need to start, and I hear perhaps we
Yeah.
can start doing something about it. And I'm happy to working on that. And you said that was beautiful at the end, and that's something that I love, and I always share in my work as well. Is we become a ripple effect when we work on ourselves, because that
Yes.
we are sharing our energies and everything, whether we are aware or not. So it's that responsibility as well on ourselves, on others, on the world, on everything, on nature, everything to,
Mm,
yeah, to regulate our emotions, to get to know ourselves. So it's not that we stop feeling the emotions, and that's, I'm very happy you said that, because some people will tend to think that dealing with emotions is not feeling them. But
yes. No, 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 no.
it's
Feeling
totally
them
the
is
opposite.
really
It's okay to
important.
be angry. Go and get angry, but it's a
Yes.
different type of anger when we are completely unaware of ourselves to when we are aware of our emotions and accept them. It's a different kind of expression, no?
Yeah. If it's interesting because, things still crop up for me, and I get angry with something, and I don't always understand why. But, that self searching, what's that about, just highlights something else for me to learn.
Mm,
Bam, gone. And so I don't do it anymore. Here's a really simple one. I used to get really angry in the car. I still can, by the way, but
mm,
for people who cut me up. And then I suddenly realized, hold on a moment, I do that to others. What is that about? And when I started to think about it, I was always under time constraints,
mm,
and I was always leaving things to the wire. I still do to a degree, but it was that behavior. And I don't, have I actually got to the bottom of that? I think there's several things. I think I'm not where I expected to be at this time of life, and certainly at various points behind. At the time wise, it felt like it was running out. It wasn't. It
mm.
was just that, that's how I felt when I was in the car. I've got 1,000 and different things to do, and there's no time. Rah, rah, rah. So all that was a message for me. And my car's been always been a good point to remind me of things. Do I still get angry in the car? Yes, but at least then I'm recognizing what's that? Oh, time. Hello.
Yeah.
I've got to give myself more time.
Yeah.
So it's me. It's always me. It's never the person cutting you up.
Yes. Yeah. That is super important. That message is super important. And yes, so it's important to feel all the emotions. And I just wanted to ask you one last question, so then we can wrap up. But again, I could stay here and ask you a million more and have more, because emotions are it's so much to talk about. And so, but anyway, so how can, I mean, if can emotions become a skill, a tool? How can emotions become a powerful tool?
I think once we start to become self-aware and are willing to explore what's going on for us, we develop emotional intelligence. I call it emotional mastery, but intelligence for those who are that way inclined. What does that mean is that you can then facilitate somebody who is having an emotional moment. You may be able to influence them before that, but I can remember an example when I was at work. I was on customer site, I was a project manager, and one of my engineers had a meltdown. I mean, he was shouting across the office. It was like, crikey. I could tell he'd got himself into a right state. So I said, right, come with me. So I took him off to the coffee place, and we sat down and talked through emotional intelligence to help him understand what was going on for him. It meant I could handle him much better. I didn't have to get involved or take it personally. Something was going on for him. I did sort of know, but he needed to understand what was going on for him. And by the time he calmed down, he could go back in a much better space. But what you're doing there is in your day-to-day life, you can handle situations much better because you know that the emotion that's being thrown your way isn't yours, that's theirs,
Mm,
not yours. You do not have to take it on, be offended by it.
mm,
Yes, keep yourself safe. So if it's followed with behavior, you don't want to be sticking around, but you do not have to tolerate it either. Or if you want, you can soothe the other person by listening to them. So I was talking to somebody the other day, and they're really wound up by somebody winding them up, you know, with some of the language that they were using. And just talking to them and saying, well, you know, what can you do to deal with it? She, well, I'm just ignoring it. She said, but I just might blow. Oh,
mm.
okay. Well, that's not helpful.
No, no, no. Yeah.
So it's that emotional intelligence to understand not just you, but others, and how you can manage situations much better. Great for families.
Mm.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
You know, very often you'll hear about, you know, going home to, you know, children going home to their parents, grown adult children going back to their parents, and they immediately become the child again. And
Oh,
once they
yes,
could,
I've been there. I've been there. Yes, totally.
yeah, once they become the adult, they can have adult to adult conversations. It just changes the relationship. Once they understand it, it makes a big difference, I think.
Yes, yes. No, absolutely. I love that. And I mean, in a way, it's learning to express emotions, our emotions, with that awareness and everything that you share by learning to
Yeah,
express that emotions. It means, again, that we are not going to bottle them up and then explode or get stored in the body. So it's learning how to express them, but very important to express
exactly.
them so they don't get stuck.
Yeah,
Yeah, very, very.
exactly that. And I think, you know, for me, when I think about it, you know, just to reiterate, it's not about not having the emotions because, you know, the body's obviously still got some stuff going on, but it's about how you manage it. So if you think you are going to explode like this person, walk away. You know, I can't deal with this right now. I'm sorry. Get
Yeah,
out of there.
yeah. Come
So
on, walk.
you're aware of your own emotional state and know that this is not good for you,
Mm.
and leave the room.
Mm.
Mm,
Oh, amazing, amazing, Kim. Well, Kim, again, I see that we're short on time. So, is there anything else that you would like to share? Maybe that we didn't discuss that you would like to share for people to have awareness of emotions, anything.
yeah. Do you know, I was going to say it a bit earlier, but now is a good time. Um, we need to be aware of how powerful we are, and we can influence people in a positive way, you know, not for self gain, but, you know, just holding them to account in a better way. And I think everybody watching this, everybody who knows you, Helena, they have no idea of how powerful they are. And that the more that they can start to take back control of who they are and how they are, dealing with the stuff that's got buried. And yes, there will be some big stuff for some people. Reach out, get some help. Coaches can be very good at dealing with this. or therapists, whatever you need to help you clear that, your power, and I don't mean over others, but your power and influence on those around you will be incredible. I find people are just finding things so much easier to deal with rather than wading through the treacle that they've been doing all their life because they've had it in a certain way. So everybody watching this is already on that journey. And how incredible is that? So I just want to say thank you to those watching this, to those listening to this, to those who work with the likes of you, Helena, and me. They're amazing and they have no idea.
Wow, that was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. It's all about self-empowerment, and yeah,
Yeah.
I love how, yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Kim. This has been an amazing conversation. And is there anything as well that you want to share with people that they can contact you? Maybe you're offering something right now. Yes. What do
Oh,
you have right
yes,
now? What do
thank
you have
you.
right now going on? What do you have going on right now? Let's hear.
So, what I've started doing, because people don't recognize the emotion, I've talked about the fear, and people don't realize how it might be manifesting in their world. So, by checking out my website, I've got masterclasses. They're free. They are 3 hours in length, but trust me, they'll be worth it because by the end, they will make a shift. I'm aiming that they'll make a shift. Obviously, during that, I will be talking about my own coaching programs, but the actual masterclass itself is an invitation for people to come along and learn something that may be useful to them. Whether they go on is another matter, but these masterclasses are really important. So I have I have ones like, dealing with your habits, resilience, communications, business communications specifically, but communications are communications, aren't they? It's
Yeah.
about people to people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Confidence, procrastination, a whole raft of them as how they've come up. And so, yeah, if anybody's interested in any of that, if they could just check out my website, which is just kim@kimsearle.co.uk. Get on there, have a look, and yeah, let me know if you want to join any of them. Thank you.
Absolutely. I will be sharing your details on the comments below next to this video whenever it's going
Thank
to
you.
be posted. So thank you, Kim. It was an amazing conversation. And again, I could have just asked you a million more questions because this topic is so vast.
Oh,
But it was
thank you.
lovely having you. And yeah, wish you all the best. And thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. And give me a little bit longer and I'll probably have more information. So who knows, maybe I can come back sometime in a year's time or whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. You've been a star.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.